All right. All of this material is on our Canvas site. Some of it is in the resources for last week, some of it is in the resources for this week. But we're pretty much in that week 13, 14, 15, whatever right now. This is supposedly session, what the hell session is this? 12, 13, this is 14? Yeah, this is 14. All right, so this is strictly a thing to be thinking about in your timeline of your portfolio development. Again, what I'm trying to do here is I'm not expecting you guys to have a finished portfolio, an exit portfolio come a week from today, but I want this process to be instilled in you. I want to have planted the seed in this so that over the course of the next semester or the course of the next year, you actually have time to work on this stuff so that when you do leave, you actually will have something that will work for you and that you can use to actually hopefully get a job. So in the very beginning, the portfolio development part of this is just a timeline. This comes from the end of that image generation PDF, and for me, it's actually just the most important part of it all. So when they talk about the acceptance of the problem, this is really just to create a portfolio. So that's what the issue is, to support and promote your photography. So again, the analysis of your problem. Who are you trying to reach here? This audience group thing, this is going to keep coming back and back and back on us. So Marguerite, one of the things that I would say about in developing your thing is that certainly you want to think about the work that you want to do, but you also want to think about who you want to do it for, because that's the other part of the equation, is who do you want to take your portfolio to and try to get work for, and that's going to have an impact on the images that you choose to show and the images you choose to make. Does that sort of make sense? So that would be that part right here. What we're going to look at a little bit today is the decision making for the visual part of it. So it has to do with your portfolio, website, social media, business card, resume, takeaway, elevator. All this kind of stuff is impacted by your brand statement and how you want to come off. Are we square on all of this part? Okay. Then choosing a pathway, the most appropriate way to reach your industry and their expectations. Breaking down, and this is a huge one right here, to break down the parts of this. So when you look at doing all of this, a portfolio, website, social media, all that kind of stuff, they can just seem overwhelming. So you need to break this down into digestible chunks that you can actually take on. So the first one we're going to actually go after here is the portfolio. I would say if you can get a killer portfolio put together, then your website is simply an extension of that. That makes your website easy. It also will give you direction for all your social media, and all of a sudden things are going to start to fall into place. But we need to pick one thing first, and so that's what we're going to do here. And again, one thing I love about this school in particular is that you guys still love print, I think, right? And print is still really revered here, and I love that part. In other places, it's not so much. So then, budgeting here, this is actually going to also have an implication on your all's, what you can do and what you can't do. At one point in my career, I had a brand new agent, and he was hell-bent and determined to work with a website designer that he had worked with before, and $8,000 later, I had a website. It was all flash-based. It was full of music. Shit zoomed in and zoomed out. It shot across the screen. It blew up. It did all of this shit. It took forever to load. I hated everything about it. It didn't really show my work. It showed his work and all that kind of stuff. And literally after $8,000, I just trashed it. I uploaded it, and it lived on my hosting site for a couple of weeks. And then I threw the whole thing away. Anyway. So budget will have a part of it. Production, again, this is exactly what we're going to start to try to be doing right now. Selection, deciding what to keep and what to. We're going to definitely talk about this afternoon. And then the evaluation part of this, and this is ongoing. Once you actually get this put into place, you need feedback. So it's feedback from us, it's feedback in this class, but it's feedback again from the people that you respect, from the people that you're trying to get work from. You know, that's one of the greatest things in the world is, hey, I would love to work for you. Can you take a look at my book? What do you think? We good? Okay. So I just want to get that part out of the way really quickly. Oh, I wanted to show you one other thing really fast, because I think, and this doesn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about right here. So how many of you guys have been, now that you have been working with a tablet, or sold on the fact that a tablet is definitely the way you want to go? Marge hates it, right? Hate it? Really? Yeah. Why? No, I'm just curious. Really? Okay. Well, but anyway, for any of those others who maybe have drunk the Kool-Aid, I just wanted to show you this. This is actually the graphics tablet that I still work with, and I couldn't remember how old it was, so I found its manual online. This is 19 years old. This is from the year 2000, and it still works great. So the thing about a graphics tablet is that don't get caught up in the whole gear thing. You know, what I would suggest, I mean, I don't know anybody in this room yet who's worked on those, the really expensive ones that they've got in the media cage that actually fell in love. I don't think anybody is using the screen at all. It's just you're using it as a tablet. So so my suggestion to you is if you are interested in buying a tablet, I wanted to show you the one to actually buy, and so that's what this is all about. Or the one that I would buy if I were you. So this is just on Amazon, and it's this guy right here. It's this Wacom Intuos graphics tablet. It's the smallest of the graphics tablets. So this is what I will say, because Katie, yours may be different depending on what you want to do. For the work that we do, so far you guys have really gotten some sense of it. It's very, 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 it's confined to a very, very small area. You're doing really small little things, whatever. You're not doing these big, broad, sweeping strokes. If you are an illustrator or you are a painter and you want to get into those really broad gestures and doing that kind of stuff and actually painting medium, you want a bigger tablet. You don't want to try and do those things on a tablet that's, you know, this is my canvas size right here, so it's too small. But at any rate, if you're just doing the photo work that we're doing, this thing will work out great for you. And to make it even better, so you'll see there's a bunch of other ones down here. You don't need all this other shit. You don't need the bigger ones. That's all these guys are. You don't need these drawing tablets for, again, these things get to be hyper expensive. You don't need any of this stuff. There's some really cheap stuff down here. This $48 stuff, you want to avoid that. And this is the stuff that if anybody's worked with any, some of you guys have been working with that tablet, whatever, it's awful. And it's not supported anymore. However, if you click on this tablet, you can actually go down here to Amazon's renewal group, and you can get a refurbed one of these tablets backed by Amazon, which means you can send it back for $55. And you won't ever have to buy another tablet. So I'm just making you guys aware of that. Okay. Creating portfolios. We're going to blow through this actually pretty quick. Again, this is a PDF that is on our website. So it's there. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but there are issues in here that I do want to talk about here. So I'm going to pretty much hit just the highlights of this. But what is your best work? And this is something that we are going to constantly be trying to evolve, and that is not going to change. Will these images get me the job I want? This is a critical one right here. Again, most of the people that I encounter when they're first starting to build portfolios and work on that kind of stuff, whatever, it's all about you. It's all about you and the images that you like and the images that you feel good about, and that is only part of the equation. A huge part of this equation is that portfolio, your portfolio is designed to do something for you, to get you a job, to get you an interview, to get you a gallery, something. You have got to keep that audience, that target in mind when you are doing your editing. So there may be things that you absolutely love in your work, the work that you've done. But if it fights the target that you are going after, if it doesn't help satisfy your brand statement, whatever, you have to eliminate the work, even though you may love it. It's just that simple. So we need to start to build some sort of disconnect between your emotional connection to work and not. So, for instance, I climbed to the top of Mount Everest, and I shot some of the most amazing pictures I've ever shot in my life. This is not true, but I've shot some of those amazing pictures ever in my life. They're ones that speak to me. They're the ones that make me feel the happiest. It's my best work. I want to be a fashion shooter. Do I show those pictures to any fashion client? No, why would I? It's meaningless to them. So even though I went to Nepal, I reacclimated, it took me 6 months to get to the top of the mountain. I climbed all the way up there, I put in that effort, I trained, I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to do it. They're amazing pictures. I can't use them. And I shouldn't use them. And how many great images do you really have? Now, you're going to hear image content, numbers all over the time. This is what I would say to you in terms of fashion photography. Now, this doesn't apply to fine art per se. There's a lot of people that would argue that in fine art, you should be able to show 10 to 15 images that demonstrates your style and you don't need to do anything more. This is the kind of work I do. This is what I do. And if you think about Damien Hirst, could you describe him in 10 images? Sure you could. Jeff Koons, can you show his work, whatever, in 10 images? Of course you can. You can get a real sense of what he does, right? But in fashion photography, it's different. In fashion photography, most of the people think about the way they see fashion photography, and you see fashion photography as stories in magazines. You do not that it's never, but it's much, much rarer to see single images in fashion magazines. Now, sure, you can see the Irving Penn nude that illustrates some beauty story, and it's just a single image. But more often than not, in fashion stories, you will see the 4 to 6 to 8 page story. That's what people expect. So for me, as fashion photographer, what I do is I try to build those the 4 double spread page stories, and I try to shoot for 10 of those. But that means 40 images for me, or can mean 40 images for me. But I don't think in terms of number of images, I think in terms of the number of stories. So again, you need to make that adjustment for yourself. But again, you'll see things like here, portfolio should be between 25 and 40. Well, who came up with that? Making sense? All right. Do's and don'ts for this. Again, this is maybe a little bit after the fact, but again, I'm trying to plant the seeds. Do define your niche. Again, what do you do that nobody else does? So in case of, Henry, I don't mean to be picking on you all day today. I feel like I keep going to you. But in Henry's case, whatever, he wants these really dark and moody images. That is something that he really can exploit because there's not a lot of people who are doing it. There are some, but not. If you look at a real sort of standard fashion part, that's not. If you look at Susan is still really all about constructing stuff and doing that kind of stuff, I think. And so that is a real niche to explore. So it's something that separates you sort of like from everybody else kind of thing, right? For me, I'm an expert at shooting khaki dockers from the waist down. It's my niche. Do you think ahead? It's all about planning. It's all about planning. It's all about planning. How many people in this room can tell me where you want to be in a year? So these are the 2 things that I'm going to actually ask you to do. Think about where you want to be in a year. Think about where you want to be in 5 years. Don't go out any further than that. It's impossible to plan that. But does where you want to be in 5 years fit with where you want to be in 1 year? Is that on the road? So for me, if I was in your shoes, I would love to be shooting editorial for all the best magazines in New York. Vogue, Bazaar, that's what I would want to do. That would be my ambition, right? So in the next year, is whatever I'm doing, I'm planning on graduating. That's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on shooting pictures, trying to graduate, put together a portfolio. Is everything that I do for that ultimately got that 5-year goal in mind? Does it have Vogue in mind? Does it have W in mind? Does it have Bazaar in mind? Am I making those kind of pictures? Is that what I'm going for? You need to evaluate that way. And your 1-year plan gets evaluated every single year. Figure out what's missing. That's going to be something that we're going to deal with today. When we finally lay out our books and whatever, and you say, okay, this is what's left in my book. I'm not going to use these pictures. I am going to use these pictures. Are there holes in that portfolio? Are there things that prevent it from transitioning from one story to the next? Are there stories that are incomplete? All of that gives you some clue about the next work that you should be making. You need to be starting to plug in those holes. And again, so this stops being about, I don't know how you guys decide to make images. I don't know what motivates you or generate, or where you have that moment where you say, okay, this is the kind of work I want to do. I don't know what motivates that part. What I do know, though, is that once this starts to come together in a portfolio, you need to then build on the strengths, try to get rid of the weaknesses. Again, you need to look at it holistically and start to plug in those holes. You need to find out what is actually missing. Don't show what you think the client wants. So I disagree with this part on some level. And I think what she's trying to get to here is that and I've said this to you guys already, I know. If you're chasing a trend or a fad right now, you're too late. The people who already do it really well are already doing it, and you are chasing something, so why the fuck would if I went to show Vogue pictures and I said, hey, my work's just like Stephen Meisel, they would just look at me and go, well, we have Stephen Meisel, why do we need you? So I would argue two things. I would argue, number one, you should show a client what they expect, but you should not be married to that. You should follow your own what appeals to you, your own sense of style, your own sense of image making. You should be true to that. And in my case right now, the fashion work that I've done, you've seen enough of the work that I've done to know that it is not what is happening in fashion right now. What is happening in fashion right now, in large measure, is almost cell phone photography, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's nothing slick about it. There's nothing post-processed about it. It's literally got it. If you look at all of Barney's, it is all shot with a cell phone, and they deliberately look for people who have no training in photography at all to do it. But that trend won't last. It's what's really hip right now, but 10 years from now, it is not going to be. So for me, I just sit on the sidelines and wait till what I do becomes hip again. Don't do it alone. Jenny and I were talking about this before. Almost, not quite, but almost more important than your portfolio is your networking. Your networking is what will get you the entries, the meet and greet the people, whatever. That is the reality. People hire the people. Who do you hire to help you make photos? You're going to go out, Connor, you were actually going to shoot pictures. You were trying to shoot them on Monday. Now you're shooting on Friday. Who do you get to help you?
One of my friends.
It's who everybody gets. People hire their friends. So if you really want to know the truth, the success, the thing that's written on the back of my ass, my rule number one for success, make friends for the people who can hire you. I really don't have that. No. Don't water down your brand identity. Again, this is what my agent used to try to do all the time. Anything he would hear about any job, and all of a sudden I'd be trying to put together a book for that job. Oh, I hear that there's a kid's job. Can you put together a kid's book? I don't shoot kids. I've got kid pictures, but that's not what I do. That's watering down my brand. That's not what I do, and it was in the effort to change anyway. And don't shy away from experimenting and storytelling. All of this seems pretty obvious. And then lastly, but not leastly, don't include every single photo in your book. People don't want to see that much. People have a very short, limited amount of time. I would actually ask you guys to read through this part. I'm not going to actually talk about this part right here because we've covered most of the essentials that are actually in here. Talking about this, again, I would read through this. This Wonderful Machine, has anybody in this room ever heard of Wonderful Machine? This actually could be a good place for you guys to start out. What Wonderful Machine decided to do, they were the first, and they're not the only ones, but they're certainly the biggest ones. They decided that the typical artist-agent relationship was a broken model. That, so again, if you take a look at Art and Commerce, probably the most successful repping agency in New York for fashion people, they've got a roster of 30 or 40 people, and they represent the top, and that's that relationship. What Wonderful Machine does is that they actually have connections with photographers all over the world. So they represent 1,000 people, 2,000 people. For them, somebody comes to them with a job and they actually do a database sort for exactly the kind of person that the client is actually looking for. So let's say they would do a search for me. If somebody were trying to shoot fashion in Chicago and I was with Wonderful Machine, my name would actually come up, and then they would actually negotiate my relationship with this client. But they do it for a whole lot less money. So instead of doing 25% or 30%, they do it for more like 5 or 10%. So it's a different model. But anyway, they are all about, again, their solution to so much of this stuff is how they function and work with photographers to develop their brand and to get their stuff branded so that, again, all of this becomes viable. So again, I would read through this. You can see these are only 2-page little story, little vignettes. So I would actually look through that part. It does. So for them, they're not, okay, Art and Commerce is specifically looking for a fashion/celebrity kind of photography. This group is all across the board. They're looking to represent, but they don't take just anyone. So you have to apply to it. It goes through sort of a rigorous vetting method, whatever, and if they agree to work with you, whatever, then they bring you in, you work on their website, you put that all together with them. And then again, when anybody is looking for anything like that, whatever, then you're searching, you will come up, and then they will actually work at trying to get you into that. So no, they do a really broad range of stuff. Okay, this is another thing that comes up a lot of times. Do you put personal work in your portfolio? Now, there are arguments for and against this. In my opinion, the better place for your personal work is your Instagram account. So let me ask you this. How many people in here have a Facebook account? How many use it? It's worthless. That's fine. Keep using it. Hook up with all your friends, that kind of stuff. But the business world could care less about Facebook. They don't deal with it at all. Instagram is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's what everybody uses, period, as far as business goes. So a lot of people would say it is the perfect place for you to show your personal work, because you are not presenting it in a portfolio that is, okay, I'm going to send this portfolio to Vogue. I'm trying to get that job. That's what I'm trying to get. So I'm showing them my fashion work. They don't really care about the landscape things that I shoot or the project that I decided to do. There's a well-known photographer here in town named, have any of you guys ever heard of Paul Ehrlich? He's a really famous, relatively famous photographer here in Chicago, and he exploits this really well. He did a project for an entire year called One a Day, and his mission was to shoot a postable-worthy photograph every single day for 365 days. Now, as a professional photographer, that's a challenging thing to do, I've got to be honest with you. Every day he did it, and every day he did it. And it ended up working out really well for him. It was basically, he does corporate portraiture and that kind of stuff. He does a lot of rock bands, that kind of stuff, whatever. But it showed a completely different side of him, and it gave him that venue to actually do that. So for me, that would be the best of both worlds. I would argue against putting personal work in a print book unless it dovetailed right into your brand. Make sense? Michael?
Well, I feel like, Instagram is becoming more a viable place for people to get jobs and stuff like that.
It is.
So, I mean, would you say that your personal work can then, serve that same purpose, or do you recommend also, kind of keeping some sort of professional or...
I would absolutely do the mix.
Okay.
I would absolutely do the mix, Connor.
And I think I was reading some advice from Lindsay Adler that you had posted. There was a part, I think, where it was saying, if you want to make money off an image, don't put that on Instagram. So, where is that line between I want to show good work, but then this is actually something I want to publish for myself?
For me, no, it's a great question. For me, I try to always look at the bigger picture. The client that I am interested in getting is the repeat client. I don't want one-offs. I don't want somebody that worked for once and never work for again. So, and if I can get a repeat client, they will pay me so much more money in the end than a single image sale will ever cost me. So this goes down to the cost, because promotion is expensive, and what we're getting into is going to be expensive. So when all of a sudden you say, okay, I can have a custom portfolio made for $350, and you're thinking, fuck, $350 for a photo album? If that photo album gets you one job, and that one job pays $2,000, was it worth it? It was. So for me, I focus less on a single image sale. I look at the bigger picture, and if I think that image is going to have greater impact on my Instagram account or on my website or something like that, whatever, that's the way I would play that. But that's me. And mostly in fashion, what I do is, again, some people, in the fine art world, whatever, print sales have become your lifeblood and something that you sell. So you should know this. How many people in this room know who Catherine Edelman is? Oh, come on, guys. Edelman is the largest, most successful fine art photography gallery in the city of Chicago, and nobody has drugged you over there yet? Well, at any rate, I used to be Catherine Edelman. Again, I'm a horrible speller. E-D-L-E or E-L-M-I-N or M-E-N. I'm sorry, what is it?
It's E-D-E-L.
Oh, EDEL. There you go. Anyway, she represents the top photography, fine art photography talent in the world here in Chicago, and she's very successful at it. She was over for dinner at my house one night, and I said to her, Catherine, I don't do, I do commercial stuff. I don't do the fine art game at all. How does that whole game work? And she said, oh, it's really simple. And as she said, it works this way for everyone. She goes, every single successful fine art photographer, and actually she expanded this. She wasn't just fine art photographer. It was fine artist. Every single one of them has a 5-year period that they explode and they do all of their significant work in that 5 years. And that it is then her job to sell that same 5 years for the rest of their lives. That's what happens. And when you look at her gallery, her roster, whatever, you can see that that's indeed exactly what is happening. When you guys think of, and there's a whole cornucopia of people that you could think of, and their work, the work that is selling of this, whatever, is the work that was done in this incredibly short creative burst period of their lives. And then, Joe Peter Whitkin, he had a 5-year run, and they're still selling his prints for a fortune right now. The FSA photographers, 5-year run. You can't, who bought a Dorothea Lange from, 10 years after that? Nobody. Walker Evans, Edward Weston, you name it, it's all the same for the most part. So at any rate, so hopefully that answers some of your questions about the personal, whether you do include personal work in here or not. Again, this would be an argument. So this is sort of a pro and con there. This is actually an argument for somebody. This person is actually making the argument that he did a personal project, and what he meant by personal project, which I think is a little bit different than personal work, is that he actually assigned a commercial project to himself. He didn't have a client to do it, so he treated himself as a client, and he then shot the campaign for himself as client. But it clearly fit into his brand, it fit perfectly into his portfolio, but it was not a job for a client. He shoots food, and so, but he ended up getting a job as a consequence of it. So I had a really good friend who was a designer in Milan, who actually shot for Gianfranco Ferré, designed for Gianfranco Ferré for years, and then he actually ended up getting work as the designer for all of Harley's leatherware here in this country. So he was a really big motorcycle guy, and he did a lot of menswear stuff and that kind of stuff. And we were talking one day, but he was just a designer. That's what he was. And one day he was like, work has been really shitty. He goes, I'm going to design myself a career. And that was exactly the way he thought about it. And he approached his next move exactly the way he would do it as a designer. He started culling stuff, he started looking at stuff, he started deciding what influences he wanted, who he wanted to rip off, he started amassing imagery, he made mood boards, he had stuff up on his walls, this is the direction I want, this is what I want to do, whatever, and that's ultimately what led to doing the presentation to Harley and got his leatherware, and he does it to this day. Make sense? So
I was going to ask about that, because in the design world, they often seem to promote like a passion project.
Yes.
Where you're kind of treating it the same way. So is that to me almost seems like the inverse of some things that I'm doing, where I have maybe this fashion brand and then also this personal brand.
Yes. I would agree with that completely, because please tell me if I'm interpreting this in the wrong way. It seems to me in conversations that we've had about the work that you were doing, especially what you were trying to do for your semester and whatever, it was one of the overriding most important elements of all of that was your political sense about a marginalized set of people and bringing that, there was self-motivation. It was something that you felt very passionate about. You were emotionally connected to doing that. And that's perfectly viable. However, once you make those pictures, then you have got to find the person who also has those empathies or who is looking for those pictures. And that's a perfectly fine way of doing it. But the flip side of that is to look at a potential client out there and say, what would they be interested in seeing, and then generate a body of work that actually speaks to them. So it's just the opposite direction of what we're talking about. Both of those avenues are completely viable. What most people do is the only one direction. Most people do this, I'm passionate about this, I'm interested in shooting this is what I want to do. I'm asking you guys not to abandon that part, but to actually start considering, what is it somebody out there really needs? Can I satisfy? Again, you're looking at your target. Who are the magazines you want to work for? Who are the clients that you want to work for? In my case, it's retail. I know exactly who it is I want to work for and who I can work for, and that's who I generate. That's who, if I'm going to build, we call it test photography in the fashion game, and it's where you're just putting together a group of images to then hopefully seed into your portfolio to then target at the people I'm trying to target. Make sense? All right. And then 5 minutes about portfolio reviews. How many people in this room have ever been to a portfolio review? How did it go? Was it worth it?
Yes.
Yes. I hear this all the time. People think, so in most cases in portfolio reviews, you actually have to pay to show up, to be a participant in it. And it usually is around $100, $150, but if the portfolio you want to be in is New York, it's an airplane ticket and a hotel room and $150 to get in. But it gets you in front of people that you can't get access to any other way. And again, in the initial part, I was always skeptical about this. I always thought, this is just a money grab. That's all this is. This is a money grab on everybody's part, and I'm going to be the loser here. And it did not turn out that way at all. I know people who swear by portfolio reviews. So I would like you guys to at least keep that an open mind about that part. If you can get in front of the people that really, really, really can boost your career or do something with your career, that can be a game changer and it'll be worth every penny you spent to get there. So things to, actually though, just really quickly, so reviewers aren't looking to hire new photographers. If you guys think that the photography market is saturated, you're right, but if you think that people aren't looking for new talent all the time, you are completely wrong. There is a place for each and every one of you. There is a career for each and one of you to have. I swear, it's just a question of finding it. Even if reviewers are looking for talent, they get annoyed if you try to leave promos. We are going to touch on promos in this class. I'm not really going to expect you to actually have a finalized promo printed out as much as we're going to have a conversation about what those things are. But basically, they're leave behinds. What it is, the way I tend to think about it is that it is a very, very, very glorified business card is what it really is. Now, most people do them, just postcards end up being good leave behinds, but you can do a really exorbitant, crazy leave behinds. People do portfolios, people do newspapers, people do mock-up magazines as leave behinds. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to impress somebody enough that they want to hang on to your promo piece. And if you're really lucky, they take it home, they take it to their work, whatever, and they tack it up on their wall and they treat it as art for a temporary amount of time. It always revolves, but imagine the art director that you want to work with more than anything in the world takes one of your promo pieces and sticks it up in their little cubicle on their little bulletin board. You have hit pay dirt. Because every day they go in there and they look at that image and they think, God, I really got to do something with this person sooner or later. And then they go, I don't remember who it is, but they look on the back of your promo, oh, it was Jose, I'm going to give him a call. Electronic portfolios like iPads are a must-have these days. That is not true. So here's the deal. You guys love print. Everybody loves print. I would argue that print is just as important as it has ever been. It's tactile. It's real. It's a control that you cannot get electronically. It's physical. All of those things. So I would strongly suggest that you have that. A website is not negotiable. You have to have a website. That would be your electronic version. The advantage to having an iPad is twofold. The first is that it's extremely easy to edit. Print books are very tough to edit depending on how you printed your book. If you print a bound book, the only way to fix it or the only way to edit it is to reprint it. If you've got a post and screw book, which we're going to look at in just a second, the only way to change that is also to pull it apart, reprint, and then put it back together again. Whereas with an iPad, you just simply go in and you edit the software, you just pull this picture out or shove that picture over there, throw another one in, you're good to go. It takes 5 minutes. However, it's small. It's electronic, it's glary, it would not be the top end of my game. However, what a lot of people will argue this, and I think I would agree with it as well, is that if you have an iPad copy of your portfolio, that, and you carry it with you. It's always in your briefcase, it's always in your backpack, it's always in your whatever, that you also always carry around. Then no matter what happens, if all of a sudden you meet some freak accident, meet somebody on the street, and they say, God, I'd love to see your work, you go, here it is. And you're not carrying around a giant portfolio the whole rest of your life. So it's just something that gives you that access to that. So again, it would be something that I would consider, but not something that I would feel like is essential. If you're showing motion, that's a completely different issue. If you're doing film, video, that kind of stuff, whatever, you have to have an iPad. It's the only way to see it. Yes?
How about like single sheets of prints put in order?
How about doing what?
Like just like single sheets of prints put in order, so you don't have to like go back and print the whole thing, but you can.
Oh yeah, we're going to look at ways to actually construct a book. Like the portfolio that I have, it's relatively easy for me to edit. I pull stuff out and put stuff in. We're going to actually have a conversation about exactly that. I don't need a portfolio review. I can critique my own work. How many people here really believe that they have the best opinion of their own work? Yeah, you need dispassionate voices to look at it, because again, the Mount Everest picture is the perfect example. You've put in all this effort, time, and money, and you bring that with you to that image. That image is, okay, behind my back I've got two images. One of them is worth $10, one of them is worth $10,000. Which is a better image? Oh, you really have no opinion? I'm not setting you guys up. I know you feel like I'm doing that.
The more expensive one.
Of course it is. And you haven't even seen the pictures, but you know that. And that's the risk. That's what you bring to this whole process when you're trying to call your own work, is that you know the time and effort it put into it. You know the emotional connection to it. You know what it took. You know the whole backstory. You know all of that. But that shit isn't in your pictures. By the way, while we're on that topic, just so you know, we haven't really talked about commercial in this money part in this class, but you guys should just know this. Your imagery is exactly worth what you can get for it, what you can sell for it. So in that $10,000 scenario, that $10,000 scenario is a better picture. I don't care what anybody says, it is. So the reason I bring this up is that I used to do pro bono work. I used to do work for the American Cancer Society. I used to do the work for Drug Free America. I used to do work for all of those people. Never again. The most ungrateful, nastiest, meanest, fuck you people ever in your life. I hated them all. They were never happy enough. They were never satisfied enough. They never. You want to know why? Because they didn't pay anything for it. It didn't cost them anything. If they'd spent $100,000 for one of those photographs, I promise you they would fucking love that photograph. It would be the best photograph they ever had. Why? Because they paid $100,000 for it. And that is just a reality. And we all know this. You guys go shopping. Is your $10 dress as good as the is the $2,000 dress? No. Are the $5 pair of shoes worth the same as your $500 pair of shoes? No. Anyway, that's something to exploit.
How would you ever know what you're worth?
We need to take another day off, and I will do that. If you guys really want to explore that, that is well beyond this class, but it is the single most important thing I could probably ever give to you. So if you guys want to find a day, maybe the week after this whole thing is over, we will sit down and we will go through all of that. Because it's not a guess. There's definitely things that you can do to figure all of those things out. Yeah, okay. Back to the last part of this. It's the responsibility of the reviewer to offer feedback, so I won't have to speak. This is part of something that came up before that we were talking about. What you're trying to do here in terms of getting in front of reviewers is you're not only trying to show their work, whatever, you are trying to start a relationship. You are trying to build a relationship. You need to think dinner party. You need to think about, I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with this person, because that is truly what you're trying to do. You're trying to establish a relationship that you can then go back to. So I would never go in a portfolio review and not walk out without a future appointment, ever. I would never do that. As long as I would say, you know, it doesn't look like you really liked a whole lot of my work, but it looks like you were sort of interested in this last part. It's something that I've been working on, and if I put together another group of pictures that really speaks to this, can I come see you again in 6 months? Can I see you in a year, whatever? You keep that door open always, always, always. You are trying to get back to them. Another reality that I will tell you is the minute you guys get into a working situation here, do not, under any circumstances, ever burn a bridge, because those people, this is a small world, and you will run into those people over and over and over again in different capacities, and if you've burned that bridge, you're toast. So it's all about building relationships. It's all about networking. It's all about all of that, keeping that whole thing going. That's what you're trying to do as well. So I think that gets us through that part. We're doing pretty good. I'm going to try to get through the whole rest of the portfolio part here really quickly. We're going to look at physical portfolios. There's just a couple things in here that we'll talk about. I'm going to actually ask you to read this Portfolio 101. It's 2 pages. That's all it is. But I do want to look at this really quickly. So, elements of a portfolio. We're going to discuss a couple things. Again, this is another John Morrison slideshow presentation, so I'm giving him credit and I'm also blaming him. So again, brand is critical to all of this. We don't need to go through anything more in this, but we need to talk about it and what ultimately makes up your brand. So we're going to look at the elements. So these are the things that you ultimately are going to have to start to consider as you're moving down the road to actually having a portfolio. A logo. Now, a logo can be as simple or as complex as you actually want it to be, but it is something that is, again, it's a symbol of your name, it's a symbol of you, it is your brand, though. So again, if some people on the last class we were together ended up in the warm and soft range, other people ended up in the cool, hard range, whatever. Logo would actually be connected directly to that, so would all of these elements for that matter. The next thing is that you would actually want to pay particular attention to your cover design. It's the first impression that people get of you. So, is your portfolio softbound? Is it made out of some beautiful Japanese paper? Is it leather bound? Is it really sort of hardcore cutting edge? Is it leather bound that's got metal studs in it? Are you going in that route? Is it clear acrylic? It can be anything, but all of it, again, should be driven by your brand. Name and a cover page. This is critical. If you look at any art book in the world, when you open it up, you do not see an image the first page that you hit. Your portfolio should be the exact same thing. You should open it up. There should be a cover page in there, and in most cases, there should be like a vellum, or there should be a protective sheet in there. Look at art books. Look at the way they actually present that stuff. That's how you want your portfolio to be. So it's not like you open the cover and bang, you're into the images and off to the races. It is a process of slowly drawing you in, demonstrating the quality, demonstrating the brand before you actually get to the images to set people up visually, tactily. Does this make sense, everyone? Interior, the imagery pages, tear sheets. Now, in my case, a lot of my imagery is tear sheets. Tear sheets are printed sheets. They're just things, they're ads that I've done, they're editorial stories that I've done that actually have all the copy on them. They're really literally pulled from the pages of the magazine, so that's what tear sheets would be. Some people separate these two. I don't. A client list, if it matters, again, in my case, a client list would matter because, again, I have worked for all the real heavies. I've worked for Bloomingdale's, and I've worked for Saks, and I've worked for Neiman's, and I've worked for all of those people. That helps lend credibility. So when people are looking at your book, they actually say, oh, this guy's worked for Neiman's. He probably can do what I'm looking for it to do. And then contact info, and this is critical. There's contact info everywhere because no matter how good your portfolio is, if you don't give people a way to get in touch with you, it's all been for nothing. This talks about logo design. You can actually go through it. Again, what is a good logo design? I am not necessarily the person that would spend tons of time on this. I would pay attention to it, but I would not spend 6 months trying to develop my logo. That's just not who I am. If I was really hell-bent and determined to it, I would consider hiring somebody to do this because I'm not a graphic designer. That's not really my forte. Again, would that be money well spent? Could be conceivably. But again, the one thing take away from this is that whatever logo that you ultimately end up with should be a reflection of your brand. So what a logo isn't, blah, 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 blah. To recap, keep it simple, keep it memorable, it must be timeless, it must be versatile, wow, and it must be appropriate. Okay. So these are some examples of logo and branding. Again, I'm going to blow through this. Your logo does not need to contain a camera. I thought this was pretty funny, so I didn't take this out. But it really is funny how many people are compelled, hell-bent, determined that I'm a photographer, so I'm going to have a lens on my business card, or I'm going to have a roll of film on my business card, or I'm going to, that's all pretty cliche. I would probably tend to avoid that. This should get to a little bit better. So we're just starting here. This is all about how to build a logo if you actually want to do that. This is just a reiteration of branding. Who is your target audience? What is it you're trying to say with your brand? What is your brand telling you? Are you cold and hard? Are you warm and soft? All of your logo should be reflections of all of that. Again, this is a little bit long-winded right here. So this one, though, is critical. So we have talked about this before, Marge. I think it was with you. We were talking about Adobe Color, right? So I need everybody to do this. Do you guys still have Henry's picture that's got that sort of the alleyway that's a little bit on the green side right here? I'm going to jump out of this really quickly. I want to show you that. So do me a favor. Just simply get online, new page, and go to Adobe Color. They don't spell it with a K anymore, so just Adobe Color. And so, okay, to that, it shows up here as color with a K here, but once you get to the website, they get rid of all of that. So, anyway. So, this is basically what I got. What I would say here is, this is just a beautiful thing to actually know that you can do this. If you click on extract from an image, and then you navigate to that image of Henry. It's going to say drag and drop this, so I'm going to navigate to it and find it. And it was this one right here. You can drag this image and drop it on this. You may not be happy about a Photoshop file, but did that work for you guys yet? No. Let's try this really quickly then. Double click on that image to open it up in Photoshop. And we're just going to do a quick export of this guy. So I'm simply going to flatten this image, and this will be sort of in preparation for file prep. This would be how I would actually go about doing this for a website anyway. So again, I'm going to hide everybody else. I'm going to come over to my, I'm going to get rid of the other image that's actually in here. I'm not going to save it. So in this case, I'm going to come over to my layers palette, the drop-down menu. I'm going to flatten this image. It's going to say, do you want to throw away the hidden layers? I'm going to say, sure, fine, you can throw away the hidden layers. Now, when it comes to doing stuff for your website, how do you guys size your images? I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves because I was really saving Friday for website stuff. We might as well do it right now because we can. How do you size your images? Or do you just upload? How many of you guys have a website? Okay, so what, do you guys upload gigabyte images to your website?
My website is like a limit, so when I do like item file, export for web,
Right.
or save for web, and then I just change the whatever bottom number to like 1600. I don't know what the measurement is.
So the limit that you have is a size limit? In terms of megabytes, right?
Yeah.
Or kilobytes. Well, all of that works well, but you're probably running the risk of compressing your image more than it needs to be compressed because the dimensions are too big. Mm-hmm. So if you take a look, I need everybody to do this with me really quick. Come up to your Apple menu and come down to System Preferences and click on Display and then click on Arrangement. Display is what you want to be. And then if you've got best for built-in retina display, change that to scaled. And you will actually see if you hover over this, I'm just hovering over my default, and it says it looks like this is a 1,280 by 800 pixel screen. There is no reason for me to have an image bigger for my website than that to show on my screen because I can never show it in that part, right? Some people will say, so in yours retina displays, when you hover over yours, what does yours say? Yours is the same as mine. Does anybody have a newer, so what is your display? Yeah, because yours is a newer model.
16.
Yeah, so in Jenny's case, hers is up around the 1600 range, it's 16, so these are pixels, that's all it is, it's a pixel count. In bigger monitors, like 32-inch monitors, those can get up to around the 3000, 3500 range, that kind of stuff, but you don't need an image that's any bigger than that. Okay, so we're going to size this accordingly to that. You can close this up, come up to your image menu, come down to image size, and in the image size that comes out, you will see, if you use your drop-down menu right here to do pixels, you do not want to resample, you want to undo, I take it back, you do want to resample this because we're going to change the pixel count. Use your drop-down menu to come down to pixels, and you'll see that the width of this right now is 5,184 pixels. That's almost twice as big as a screen will ever be able to show it to me, so I don't need it to be this big. You'll also see that there's a number up here, it's 102 megabytes, that's the size of this file. So I'm going to change mine, I'm going to simply cut it in half, I'm going to do 2500. Usually I pick a standard for this, especially if I'm going to website. I do have a standard size that's on my website, but in this case, I'm simply going to do it in the generalization. I'll say okay to that. Look how much smaller it just made my image. If you hit undo and do that again, you'll see if you look up at the top, it'll tell you what the reduction is in size. This image is 1/4 the size that it was. I went from 102 megabytes down to 24. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Then you go, oh please, then you go to, again, and this is exactly, Carson was exactly right in terms of how to do this. This is how I do it. Again, you would come up here down to export, and you want to come down to save for web, which is a legacy thing. Photoshop is getting more and more legacy things because everybody's so angry at them for actually killing all the stuff that they've killed. They've got legacy out the ass. Anyway, if you take a look at this, in my case, I've got a 4-up. Do you guys have a 4-up, or do you have, what else do you have? None of you even has this up. So you've got a single one up. So if you look at the tabs along the top, you can click on 4-up, and it will show you your original file right here, and then various compressions right here. This is set at a quality of 60, which is a high compression for a JPEG. Then they cut these in half. This will be a 30, and this will be a 15. You can change any of these. So for instance, on this one that I'm on right now, I can actually change that from a 60 to a 50. And it'll recalculate the compression of this. You can see it's a little bit smaller. You can take a look and see if your image is being destroyed or whatever. But the other thing that's important about this is this convert to sRGB. It exists right here. So you would want to set up your compression to the amount that you wanted. You definitely want to convert this to sRGB because this is going to, again, go to your website and then simply hit save. And it'll offer to save this thing, and it usually will put it right next to the file that it's actually coming from. But in my case, it's actually giving me something completely different. So I'm going to put it back in the Copy Me folder and just hit Save. You can close this guy up now. You don't need to save it because that's your original image. And then come back to that color and drag and drop that file that we just made onto it, the JPEG. And it maps out and it gives you a color palette, and here it is right here. This color palette, again, you can save this color palette to your library. So save to my library. That is now in my library. That is now a color palette I could use to actually build my splash page for my portfolio, my whatever, blah, blah, blah. You guys get all this? All right.
I think it is from doing it through Bridge.
Yeah.
I just don't have the option to do the JPEG for web, but I do have the option to resize the image.
Oh, okay, but again, you want it to convert to JPEG because you don't want to upload.
Yeah, I converted to JPEG.
Yeah.
It's just easier and it's safer for me because it's never saving the file, it's always saving a copy of the file.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. We may take a look at that when we get back. Because, again, we're a little ahead of the game. I didn't really want to get into saving for a web right now, but this was, I thought, important for you guys. Almost done, guys. Okay, so a way to get about color here. So again, the importance of color. all of this is stuff that you guys should already know. Color invokes emotions, color, again, this is all being driven by your brand. All of this would be driven by your brand. So can you imagine, I gotta pick on somebody else now. Can you imagine me with a whole lot of real floral pinks in I've got a pink portfolio. That's really just not who I am, right? I don't think. Maybe it is, I don't know. Trying to keep an open mind. This is all basically about all the stuff that we just talked about. Create mood boards. How many people in here have ever created a mood board? How many people know what a mood board is? Okay, you all know what one is. Why do you ever use them? Again, it's visual notes. That's all it really is. It's visual notes. You see things that you like. Oh, that speaks to this. Yeah, I like that. I mean, in the case of, again, any portfolio that you want to make, if you saw a portfolio, a design that you actually really liked, do a snapshot of it, print that snapshot out, stick it on your mood board, and let that whole thing build, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a visual group of things that inspired you, and it's not just one thing, and all of a sudden you're like, I really do like this, or I really think I'm going to go down that road, or this is really, I forgot all about this, whatever. It's just something to create that, again, it's a visual diary, for lack of a better way of anything, that can actually help you define this, to give it visual weight. When we work on any photo shoot ever, we have mood boards forever. It's always about design. It has everything to do about, it's not just the sort of elements that we want to use. It'll have to do with the emotions we want, the posing that we want, the lighting that we want. All of that is developed into a mood board. The color swatches that we want, all of that is developed into a mood board because it guides the whole shooting. I'm just asking you guys to consider doing that to build your portfolio. Make sense? Different types of mood boards. Some people do this electronically. Some people do this on Pinterest. Pinterest is really hard for me to look at a collection myself, but if that's how you like to work, that's fine. So again, all of this is all about, and so I've met my designer. Again, I would never use this font, whatever it is. So, by the way, let me tell you, that's another thing we should actually mention in this. I don't care what your brand is. It never is going to call for a font that has little gravestones on it with letters in it, or ones that are made out of hearts, or letters that are made out of bubbles, or ones that are made out of ghosts, or ones that are made out of, that will never happen, not unless you are trying to get a job working for a 1-year-old. And I feel that way about this font right here, same thing. I don't ever want to see this font ever again in my life, personally. I've met my designer, have a mood board, a logo, now what? So again, creating your portfolio, the last part that we actually got to, and we're doing fine time-wise. So it's brand it to your vision. Again, your vision, this goes back to branding. Use good craftsmanship. This goes without saying. People make assumptions about you based on the material that you actually have. So in one of my last classes, I actually had students keeping what I call, basically it's a collection of swipes, a collection of images that they pulled out of magazines that they kept together in a binder to refer to as ideas. It was inspiration for ideas. It was an inspiration book. Now, I don't know if you guys do that. I do that to this day. It's like encyclopedias of them. I've got volume after volume after volume of stuff that inspired me, that I can refer back to and say, God, yeah, I'd love to do something like this. I'm going to do something like this. So that's the book I actually asked them all to keep. And this guy, he had a lot of talent. He was really gifted. He was a good photographer, the whole 9 yards. But he walked in with a portfolio that was just ripped out sheets that had been stuck in a folder and handed that to me. And I was like, would you ever hand that to a client? And he goes, no, of course not. I go, why the fuck are you handing that to me? And I flunked him for it. And he was like, well, what's up with that? And I was like, look, I don't care what the images were that you brought. I don't care how insightful they are to you, whatever. Look at this piece of trash that you have given me. I don't even want to touch it. I don't have gloves. And it goes to this right here. The craftsmanship that you use has everything. It starts to already speak about you and who you are before anybody even looks at your first picture. So it just goes without saying. Cover design, again, should be a creative statement about the value of you, the The purpose of your cover design is to get noticed and differentiate from the crowd. No different than all the other things that we have been talking about all along. These are some examples of different possibilities for portfolio covers. This is actually paper. This is an acrylic one. This is metal. This is a colored. This isn't a metal. This is actually a synthetic material. It's like a laminate board. The other one's in here. This is fabric covered. This is a box that actually slides open, so it's more like a cigar sort of box here. Again, I'm throwing out a couple things here. I'm going to show you hopefully a few more that are a little bit more meaningful here. This would be one example of a cover page on here. So your interior pages, and this is what we're going to deal with all afternoon, is number one, it needs to have a consistent vision. Number two, your flow and your sequence are critical in all of this. And number three, your decision to either print this double-sided or single-sided or a combination of both. We're going to talk about all of that. Okay, so this would be, and again, you guys have seen this stuff. This would be simply an example of, this is an image with a border. You can actually consider full bleed. That would be what this is right here. You can talk about having multiple images and layout or single images right here. All of this is stuff that should be driven by your brand, should be driven by supporting your brand. Your book should be no bigger than 16 by 20. If somebody ever showed up with a 16 by 20 portfolio, I would just tell them to leave. That's wrong. 11 by 14 is the max. I've had people walk in, I've actually seen this, I have people walk in, you guys ever see those big portfolio cases? They're like this wide and this tall. They're meant to hold like fine art prints, that kind of stuff. If I see somebody walking down the street with that coming to visit me, I don't answer the door. I don't answer their email. I scratch them off. It's like, that being said, and we're going to get through, we're almost done, guys, but I'm going to give you one last quick story here. There's a girl here in town, her name is Lori Rubin. She's actually a really, really successful food photographer, still a photographer. She has a lot of film and commercial as well. She was an art teacher in grade school. She graduated from college, she's teaching in grade school, and she does these life-size photo collages. So it's like people, but so she'll take a photograph like of a person, and then she'll like dress the person, and they were life size, so they were this big. And she gets a call. Somebody got wind of her at Playboy, and they called her in they wanted her to shoot some men's fashion for them. And she comes walking in again with one of those monster portfolio cases, and she pulls out these collages that are 8 feet tall. And that was her portfolio. But it took her the entire afternoon to actually get it all unpacked and hung up on a wall for them to actually look at. They ended up hiring her. They had a very open mind. I wouldn't suggest doing this. Again, your paper choice, this becomes critical. How many people in this room have a favorite paper? So one of the rubs in that favorite paper can be, does it come in a double-sided version if you want to print double-sided? And if it does, you're great. If it doesn't, you're out. Or you just need to rethink how you're going to actually print your book. Does that make sense? There are some high-quality papers that are double-sided. I'll show you resources for that. There are also ones that come pre-scored and drilled. This is what I use, is a version of this. This part actually makes your portfolios fold over easier. They're also drilled to actually go in a post and screw. We'll talk about what this setup is. Most of the people that I know that are doing portfolios, and that doesn't mean you have to, are using screw and post, and this is the kind of page that they would want to use for that. So then it's just a question of, do you do that work yourself? If you have this special paper that you love and your book has to be printed on, or can you find something that you are content with? Make sense? Yes?
There's a lot of like really good matte paper that are like double-sided.
Yes.
But when you like bind the book, it's like this thick.
Yes. So again, you would want to go in and score them the way these are scored, because what this allows it to do is actually fold. Because your problem is that it's binding like this, but then the pages like spread out. Yeah. That crease will actually mitigate that. Yeah, oh, well, then there you go. You could do perfect binding, but then try to edit that. At any rate, we'll talk about all this in just a second. And then finally, in pages. And in the in page right here, he's got a bio on him, but his real issue here is his client list, and there's also a series of tear sheets that are in the very back of this. So this would be another example of that part. So by and large, guys, that would be what we need to tackle in all of this. Are there questions about any of this? All right, so I'll see you guys at 1 o'clock.